Randy Kay here. We all go through struggles at times, and I want to share with you through stories and insights and interviews with others how much God loves you. He loves you immensely, and that's what I hope you will hear through our interviews and what we have to share with you. Thanks for staying tuned. Here we go. Hi, this is Randy Kay with the Heaven series. I have a guest that is, I know I say that our guests are going to bless you because they seem to always bless our audience. And I really, and just talking with Susanne Seymoure prior to this interview and learning about her story, I was absolutely immersed in how kind and generous she is in her heart of hearts. She really is a good person. And so, Susanne, it's great to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you so much, Randy, for having me. And thank you for all you do for others and in providing these stories. True
Well,
story.
well, thank you, Susanne. It's my pleasure. And I've got to say that your story is intriguing because you died in a skiing accident at the age of 12, and I'll let you tell the story. But you wrote a book called My Secrets from Heaven, which is a true blessing that we'll note in the body of this broadcast message. And that brought you into the arms of Jesus in heaven. You encountered angels and God's light. And we're going to get to the golden hand because people want to hear about that part of it. Your family has an interesting background as well because your parents escaped from Nazi Germany. So you have that as part of your story. But let's begin. I'll turn it over to you, Susanne, to tell us about what happened that brought you to this moment where you were in heaven with Jesus.
Okay. So let's see where to start with the accident itself or heaven itself. Where should I start?
Yeah, let's wherever you want to start, Susanne.
Okay.
We can start certainly with what happened in the accident, or even if you want to go further than that. But you were 12 years old at the time, so you were a child, and I think it was in Pennsylvania, and you were skiing with the family.
Right. And right. And what's coming is the whole story. So what I want to share is, wow, there's just so much I want to share. I'll just do it in chronological order. Originally, I like to let people know my background so they can make their own full picture of who I am and the story. My parents were immigrants from Germany, and my father actually came over and my mother with his company, which was a German lens company for aeronautics and hospitals and surgeons. Very well-known German company. I come from a background of engineers, German engineers, so I have a very scientific and practical background. And also my parents were children during the war with Hitler and the Nazis, which they survived, and my grandparents as well. And I share that whole experience because when your parents grow up during war, they're really in survival mode. So my home wasn't, and they didn't want to talk about death, and they didn't want to talk about dying, and they didn't want to talk about accidents or trauma. They didn't talk about God or Jesus or angels. It was really about living today, working and moving forward. They didn't include a spiritual realm other than the basic, this is what we are. We're Christian. This is, we celebrate Christmas. And I share that because my experience really was my first experience with Jesus was my accident. And so after that, I learned even more. And it was really, really interesting because he came to just someone as simple as me and let me know exactly who he was. And it was life-changing, changed my entire life. So I'm here to share that with gratitude to God and to help others if it helps them in any way, that would be of a great joy. So what happened was my parents immigrated, and their wish was always to have our family be together. It was a very small family, but being a broken family in Germany where kids were separated from parents because of the war. So they built this home together in the United States, and they decided to stay. And my grandparents were going to move here, and they built this home in Pennsylvania with the best of intentions. And it was a snowy day. The home was complete. We were enjoying the winter. I had a little fire going, and there was this big announcement that there's going to be snow today, but the weathermen are always so they didn't think it was anything to worry about. Well, we thought, let's get out of the house and go for a hike. So we went for a hike, and we were going to go skiing, and we wound up, there's just so much before the story where I had this scarf. The scarf was important because when we left the house, I had tied it once. My mom asked me to wear it, and something in me, she said, tie it again. I want to see it nice and snug around your neck. And so I rebelled against my mother, which was out of character. And it was this big ordeal where it was ruining the entire day. But that just tells you something about intuition or warning or angels, whatever it is that lets you know when you get that feeling inside, you know something's wrong. But as a kid, I went along with it, even though it really was upsetting. So we hiked to the hill, and on the way there, the snow just came down, and it became a big blizzard, and we became exhausted, and the forest and the streets were all covered in snow. And in the 70s, there was no snow, there was no 911 cell phones. It was just a really quiet blizzard in the middle of Pennsylvania. We hiked to this ski hill, which wasn't a public ski hill. It was really built for this little community, and it was something they put up, and we were going to use it. So when we got there, it was at least a foot of snow, at least. And we got there, and there were no cars on the road. There was, and most of the people in this community only went for the summer. So it was pretty quiet. There was really no one in their homes. It was very quiet. But we were going to leave, and my mother said, wait a minute, there's a maintenance man up there. He was locking up a clubhouse on the top of the hill. And she said, let's see if he can do something for us. So she asked him, hey, we came up here to ski. He said, sure, I'll turn it on, but I got to get home. This is a lot of snow, and there's no one on the roads. What are you guys even doing here? And my mom said, well, we went through all the trouble. Can we just ski a little bit? So he turned it on. He said, but I'm going home, so you're going to have to lock up. And he left. So now this skiing hill was open to just my family, with no one watching or operating the booth. There were no safety features because, again, this was there were no trip wires. There were no other people. So that sets the scene of the drama. So upon skiing, my scarf, we went up and down a few times, and my scarf was long. It had fringe, and unbelievable. This rope was not regulated, and my brother said he watched it bounce in the snow. It was really forceful and fast. So, and it twisted as it went up. And at the top of the hill where the rope went in, there was a little cutout where the rope went in and a cutout where it came out. And it was probably the size of your head. And I remember that because my grandfather, the engineer, and my dad, before we started skiing, we all went to the top and we looked at it. And I remember thinking, I wonder if our heads could fit through there. And we looked inside, and it was so scary because we saw these big giant metal gears that were, turning this rope, and then it came out on top, and we were, wow. And so my grandfather, of course, just wanted to see the mechanism. So as we went up the hill, my parents and my grandparents were at the bottom of the hill. They did not ski. So I went on the rope a few times. My brother said if you didn't grab it right away, it would burn a hole through your gloves. This is how strong it was. And he watched it bounce. It was just wild. So we got a hold of it, and we were so excited. And I remember I went first, and all of a sudden I noticed, I thought, great, I did it. But then I realized, oh, there goes my scarf. Why is it getting tangled? So the rope caught my fringe on my scarf. And before I knew it, it quickly wrapped around the rope and hung me. And it got so tight, I couldn't fit my hand through where the knot was. And then I knew I couldn't loosen that knot because it was a double knot. So there was no way I could slip it over my head. I knew that this was a noose now for me. And as far as I know, a hanging is always a really successful way for an execution. So I knew this was not going to have a good outcome, but I was determined to fight. So I fought the whole way up the hill, trying to unravel, knowing that it was just getting worse and worse. And my brother was behind me, and I asked him to let go because I didn't want him to see his sister, go into that little window, which I knew, that little hole, which I knew I'm either going to get decapitated or my head's going to get crushed if it does go through, because this scarf is not coming off. This scarf and the rope were one, and it just kept twisting. So at the end, I knew I was hitting into all these poles that were on the way up that were metal. And, towards the end, I just got this sense of I'm going to fight until the last second. And I did. And then I remember counting down and knowing, okay, this is it. I don't remember ever hitting the booth, but so I believe that my neck broke and I died before, like right before. But I do know that the scarf went through this booth unexplainably. And here's the German engineers at the bottom of the hill. They see this brown and white striped scarf come out the top, go through the whole machinery and come out the top perfectly straight like a flag without ever having any holes in it or tears. It just flew straight, no tangles. And how could that be? So my grandfather and my father, everyone knew that there was something very supernatural going on. They knew God was involved now. They fell to their knees and knew. No, when I hit the booth, I remember immediately looking over. I was laying on my left side and I saw this light and a person, I thought, coming towards me. And I thought it was my dad because it felt so loving and so much loving and protection and rescue. I felt like someone was rescuing me. And I got excited because I thought, it's my dad. And there were two others with him. And he came close very quickly. And as soon as he was there, I felt a sense of urgency. As soon as he was there, he knelt down before me and looked in my eyes and put out his hands. And immediately he let me know he was Jesus. And I looked and I thought, all I could see was all this love and light all around him. And I remember everything about him that he wants, that you ever want to know about him, he communicated with his eyes in an instant. Within a minute, I knew all about Jesus, all about how much he loves me. And I felt like he knew everything about me, like every thought I had, every emotion I had, my worries, my concerns, my everything, right down to, I always say, my DNA. I felt looked at through and through. And there was this beautiful, like goldish light in his eyes that was very natural looking, like a light brown with those flecks of gold. And it just was rays of love. And he was the light. He was that light. And with him were two beings that I didn't know what angels looked like. So to me, they were just two males, and one was tall and one was shorter. and they had on, I didn't know what like a gladiator or something would look like. I never saw those kind of movies in the 70s, but they had on almost looked like gladiator clothes with robes. And so they looked really tough. And they had these big wings. And I thought, wow, later in life, I look back and I thought, wow, when they say God has an army, he really does. And so they were very kind and a little bit silly because they were hurrying, and the one of them kept tripping because they had these boots on, and it looked like he was stumbling a little bit, and the other one was saying, like, come on, hurry, hurry. I felt the urgency, and they made me giggle because they were smiling and trying to get there really quickly. And Jesus had his arms out and picked me up and let me know everything was going to be all right. And I was 100% in a state of love and understanding and bliss and trust. It was an automatic trust that I trust to this day more than anything else I can ever imagine. So he carried me, and the two, I'll call them angels because they weren't like the female looking angels with sparkly wings, but they were loving. And they flew right next to me. And I remember looking at the wings thinking, what are they made of? Because they looked really like a feather bed, soft, but they were strong because you could hear them like rustling, like. And so we were flying, and we flew up, and I could see down below what my mother was doing. Well, I'll get to that, but I was in this state of like just this calm, joyful, loving peace. And then I heard, Jesus was just, comforting and loving, and we're going home. And I hear this horrible, horrible scream, like a shrill, and it broke that bliss, that blissful feeling. So I went to look, and I could see my mother and my grandfather kneeling down on the bottom of the hill, and my mother running around like a chicken with her head cut off. And my grandmother had her arms holding my grandfather from behind. And later they verified that when I was telling them a little bit about things, I was trying to talk to them a little bit. And they just, the more I talked, the more freaked out they got, because they were like, how? Because you wouldn't be able to see the bottom of the hill because there were 3 like tiers. So you can't see from the top to the bottom. It's impossible. And so I imagine we were above the trees, and so that broke it. And I remember looking to Jesus and saying, I have to go back. I can't leave her. Look at her. She looks like a chicken with her head cut off. Look at her. She's never going to make it without me. She won't make it. And he was just really calm and let me know he heard me. And he let me know that I didn't feel like it was dismissive or he was overpowering me or anything like that. I just knew he heard and understood my intense fear and love of my mom losing me. I didn't know I was dead. I just knew that I was going somewhere else. And it was a home, and I was going, because he said we're going home, and I thought I always thought when I went home, my grandma and I would watch Mod Squad and the FBI. So I was thinking of we're going to watch TV. So we're going home, and we get there, and I thought a lot of things with Jesus, but I just remember the peace I felt and the trust and the absolute love and trust and understanding. And so we got there, and there was this big tree, and it was magnificent. And we sat under it, and he sat me on his lap, and the angels stood right nearby, and they were like my friends. They were my 2 protectors standing by, and Jesus. And I knew that they worked with him and for him, because he let me know that he knew everything. So I knew he was in charge. He was definitely in charge. And then along came a group of people that formed a circle, And in this, I'm visualizing it all over again. And in the circle, they were discussing what to do about me because I wanted to go home and it wasn't expected. And he was really calm and at peace. And we were, just sitting together, and I'm looking around at all this beautiful landscape, and they're talking, and I know everything's going to be all right because I know they've heard me, they understand me, and they're going to do the absolute right thing for me, and it's all good. Well, all of a sudden they start getting a little fidgety with, well, we can't surely do that. And I don't know what was happening. They just kept asking, are you sure you want to go back? Are you sure? There was always this like surprise that I wanted to go back. And so I kind of felt a little bit like the problem child. Why does she want to go back? This is so wonderful here. Like, what are we going to do? So in came another council, and they came. I call them a council now, but when I was a child, they just looked like regular beings. I guess the same as when you have a fire and out in the country, and you call the volunteer firemen, and they come in from all their different towns with the light on their roof, except these glide from their towns and they come very quickly. And I knew that they were a different group that was going to help the first group. And there were so many. The first group had maybe a dozen or so, I don't know. And the second group, multitudes of them came. And so now they're really talking about it. And in the meantime, Jesus and I are sitting by the tree, and he's showing me this tree. And there was lots of wonderful things and interesting. And then they're all talking, and then all of a sudden, the second group is still kind of miffed what to do. And now they're asking, are you sure? Are you sure? I just remember there was a lot of like, why doesn't she want to stay? And Jesus is still sitting and holding me. And I'm thinking, I really do want to stay, but I can't. I really can't. So I knew there was some sort of system and order and like a government, because now they wake up someone they didn't want to. And it feels like, all this unfolded in my adult life as well, because as a nurse, you try to do everything you can before you call the doctor. And so that's how it, looking back is the best way to describe it. So they wake up someone that I know is going to have a very specific purpose. And they didn't want to. I could see, like, it was almost like they were counting straws, like who would draw the short straw to have to wake him up. And it's not that he was sleeping, but he was, it was like you really have to need him if you're going to ask him to help. It wasn't like, he was very specific. And so he came and he showed himself to me as an older man with a white beard and old. And I thought, is that maybe because of wisdom? And he communicated to me to really look at him. And I was in sort of a like haze of all the beauty, color, and Jesus's light. And he's like, look at me, like pay attention and etch it into your mind. So he showed himself forward and sideways, and it was like I could draw it in my mind with a pencil. He said, remember this, remember. So, and he was kind of grouchy, and I called it grouchy when I was young because it was more like he was serious, and he was so loving. There was nothing scary. It was just, he let me know that this was like important business. Like this was not a game or a silliness. There was a work that, it was fascinating. So he was serious. And so he picked me up, and then he showed me around, and I called it Heaven's Landscape wherever I was. And it was really this place, and he showed me I just call them buildings because it looked like, I didn't know what really universities were or anything like that, or I knew libraries at 12, but it looked like he let me know that there were records in there. And he wanted me to understand the seriousness of that. Like, everything is recorded, everything is written down, everything is just. It's like, in making this decision, I guess they wanted me to know that everything's considered, everything's known, and I'm just a piece of a bigger picture. And so, as much as I want to go back, they're going to look at everything. And that's the best way I could understand it. There's so much more as I got older looking back, and then I would learn through certain scriptures. But the truth is, he brought me back with just in giving me all this insight to understanding that these things are not just fly by night. Everything is important and everyone matters. So when I got there, again, there was this trust. It built so much trust in me. And I sat back with Jesus, and I can hardly like breathe when I think about it to this day, because when I sit back down, the time they took to let me know all this, and just like little old me, like I'm nobody special or different. I'm just one person, and they did all this work just to let me know about how important this was to them. So I knew after seeing Mel, and I didn't know who he was until I was an adult. I didn't have a name. He didn't talk to me. He communicated telepathically, very seriously, through his eyes. And I knew later on in life who he was when I was, I guess, in my 40s, was watching the Olympics, and someone happened to say that name, and everything in me stood still. And I'm like, what did you say? And I never heard it before. And so I started to write it down, and I didn't know how to spell it. And I kept asking, can you say it again? Can you say it again? It was very noisy. We were actually in a very loud place watching the Olympics. So I'm scribbling it down on a napkin, and I'm trying to remember it, because I know this name is the name I was supposed to know. And I thought, what do I do with this? So it was Melchizedek. And who in the right mind I'd never heard that word ever. And I thought, what? And I don't even know if I say it correctly. I was thinking, I'm not even sure, but I knew I had to put that word with that image. So now, thanks to Google and the internet, I'm looking up, and pictures are a funny thing because they're helpful and they're not, but I did find absolutely like a similar one, and I just knew. And I thought, wow, okay, that makes sense, because his energy, his being, he was a very serious, commanding person. So like, he was commanding me to pay attention. And anyway, I went back to Jesus's lap while I was there, and in the end, because now I could feel there was a sense of time, like they, and looking back, it makes me realize that returning was a big gift, because my body was so mangled. I don't know that you can always return to that body, but looking back, I realized all the trouble they went through, and I believe Jesus was healing me the whole time, because I was so badly injured. And it was amazing. So then I kind of don't want to leave there in this moment remembering it. I'm sorry. I'm just remembering it and just feeling it all. And I'm like, it's so nice to recall it all. So then he brought me back right before they were still asking, are you sure? Are you sure? You're sure? And then what happened was, when I was sitting on Jesus' lap, no one knew what else to do. And I realized that this had to come from even a higher source. So over these rolling hills that were like a green color. It looked like when you're in an airplane and you can see down and you see all the lights, but I couldn't see the city. But there was all these lights and coming from a city, and they were gold. And the reason you couldn't take your eyes off them, because they all of a sudden now stream together, and this big, like the size of Mount Everest, golden light comes, and I call it the golden hand because it came like a hand and it reached for Jesus, and then Jesus and the golden light, like it touched Jesus, and they kind of became one. And then I knew that was God, and then I knew Jesus was God. And I watched how he's so humble when he sits with you. You're sitting with this humble, not ostentatious, not, overpowering or controlling or beating his chest, or, none of that. He just feels like this absolute comfort and joy. I just remember when I hear about Jesus, the joy is what I recall, is so much joy. So the golden light, they enmeshed, and then in that came the answer. And I knew that the beings tried, and I think that I understood the learning from Melchizedek. So Jesus was kind of supervising them, I guess, to figure it out. And then in the end, when they really weren't able to, he stepped in and said, I could go back. And he brought me back, and he said, I'll bring you back. And they told me, the councils did tell me, we can't promise you that you're going to heal. We can't promise you're going to have pain. Are you sure? Because you're going to go back and have a lot of pain and suffering. And we can't guarantee anything about your physical. We don't know how that's going to be for you. We're worried. Like they didn't say worried, but it showed concern for that happening. And Jesus said, I'm going to take you back, and I'm going to stay with you until I need to, like, I knew he was going to stay there. And he did, until my parents came. And then it got cold, because then I felt the snow, and then I looked and I saw all the blood, and I was still laying there. And then I remember realizing the shock and the trauma, and his warmth was moving away, and my parents were coming up the hill. And I remember my mother was saying, who is she talking to? Who's talking to her? Is someone else there? I think someone's there. So she thought maybe another rescue team. I don't know. And she slowly stopped when she saw no one was there. She didn't see Jesus. So, then they got there, and I just knew I was going to be fine. And I was in this state of joy. And here I am, this bloody mess. And I'm looking like I just had the most amazing day ever. And they're just blown away by that. So we didn't have a hospital nearby. I had to go all the way from Pennsylvania to New York. The roads weren't plowed, so my dad had to run to the nearest home, which was quite a distance, and hope somebody was home. And he actually found somebody who dug out their car from the driveway and put the snow chains on, and we drove on the highway. And I was trying to tell my mother in the car, it was just her and I, and he was driving. And I remember trying to tell her, she's like, why are you so happy? Like, what is going on? And she's looking at me just horrified. And I had no skin on my neck. I mean, my head had the size of 2 baseballs, not softballs, on both temples. I looked, I had a big hole, gashes above, blood everywhere. My shirt was everything. And I'm in the state of like, it's Christmas. And so immediately she says, I start talking about Jesus this and Jesus that and all that, and this, all that happened. And she's just shushing me, like, quiet down. You need to calm down and be quiet. And I don't want you talking about this. And slowly I started to realize that there's probably there's some sort of a danger or something I should not talk about it, like something to be concerned about. Why is my mom hushing this and not asking me more? And so that really hurt. And I remember thinking, this won't hurt anyone. This will help everyone. Like I couldn't, but now being a mother, I know where she was coming from in the sense that she just wanted me to be quiet and calm and get well and not, she couldn't hear all that because that meant that I had died and come back. And for her, she didn't want to know about death. She didn't want to know about angels or any of it. She wanted, that was too much trauma. And it was trauma for her whole life. And my father and my brother too, even to this day, they'll still cry. They can't talk about it because it was so traumatic. So we got to the hospital and my mom went in on one stretcher and I went in on another. We were next to each other for a while, but then she, I think, had some sort of nervous breakdown. And as soon as she saw them cut the shirt off of me and wring it out, and it was just cut, I had a yellow like turtleneck on and they just wrung it. It was bright red and they wrung it out in the sink. And then the next thing I remember being on the stretcher, and it was a Catholic hospital. So all these nuns were coming and more and more and more and more. And they're saying, it's a miracle, because the doctors are taking me to the operating room. And then I came back out and I was just thinking about where's my dog, because she was on the journey with us in the woods. And I thought, I hope somebody got her because the snow was very deep. And I was fine. I was just fine. I felt fine. I remember, they were like, I had paralysis and it was a weird thing because it just kept healing and it kept healing. And I guess within a very short time, I was completely healed. So none of that made sense to anyone. And they just went with it. And the nuns said, we're going to put a plaque up in this hospital. This is a miracle. But I didn't get to tell my story or talk to anyone because I remembered my mom saying, I don't want you talking about, any of this. I don't want you, I want you to stay quiet. I want you to, just rest. And when you're 12 and your mom tells you something, that she has your best interest at heart. So you believe it. And I didn't. And, but that's okay because I knew it was real. And then I thought, well, great. All these nuns know it's real too. So that was really very cool. And then, after that, my life I kept it to myself. I didn't share my story until after my mom passed away. And it wasn't because she was angry or upset or didn't believe me. She called it my second birthday. We celebrated it privately every year in my family, but I never told because and I knew that it was a big deal to her because everyone wanted her to sue the ski hill because they tore the ski machine down that right after. It was gone and never returned. And then lawyers came and they were telling them they're going to get millions of dollars if, because, and my mother said, no, I don't want her to be on a stand or talk about this. I want her to have a normal life. And I don't want anyone to, she told me privately, she didn't want anyone to take it away from me, the beauty of it. She said, I want you to hold that. And she was protective. And also my mother, well, she never sued anybody either. My brother and I were talking. He said, Mom never wanted to sue anybody. So she kept everything, just wanted it to be normal, fit in. Let's not, she just survived the Holocaust, all that. Like, let's not create. And back in the 70s, no one talked about things like this. And there weren't. So what I did was once I recovered, which was a really funny story, for me, not for them, but I was laying on the couch and I had this blanket and I hadn't been able to walk. And then one day I just did. I got up and went to the bathroom and my mother said, wait a minute, like, how do you just, and no one knew. And but I had pain and residual, like numbness in my head, and, you know, but soon after, within, I don't know if it was even months, I went into gymnastics. So I was completely healed. I was a gymnast, a cheerleader, a swimmer. I lived now my physical therapist will tell you it's the worst locked up neck he's ever seen, but I know Jesus healed me. And I just know, because there's no other way I would be here. What I did was I went to churches after, because I was lonely for him in that, and I wanted to, they said, well, church is God's home. It's where Jesus, it's a house of God. So I thought, well, that's where I'm going to go. And so I would walk on Sunday mornings. There were quite a few churches in walking distance, and that's where I would go. And I would try to find that connection of, I just wanted to go to his house and visit him. And I did, and I felt all the love and beauty of Christ in churches, and I visited several. And my parents just said, you go ahead and, represent our family if you want, but they never did, unless it was Christmas. Then they joined once in a while, but not really. And still no questions were asked. And then finally, when I was about 14, I wanted to be confirmed. And I went through confirmation classes, and I remember the minister, he wasn't going to confirm the group because he said, well, you guys are still not really getting it and whatever. He was upset with some of the people in the group, and he wanted more work done. And so I wrote him a letter, and my mom said, why don't you tell him a little bit of what you told me in the car? And so I did. I told him a little bit, because she also let me know not to tell too much. I still felt there was this danger if I said too much. So I told him a little bit. He said he went into, I didn't hear anything back from him. He said he went into seclusion for like 2 weeks and prayed on it. And then he came back and he confirmed me. And he said, he told me a story about his own life. And he got very, I don't know what he was talking about, but he knew I had seen something and that I had that experience. But he never really questioned further. It definitely made an impact. So he did confirm our group. And well, he included me in it. I don't know if I caused everyone to get it, but he included me. So I knew he heard the story and that he believed me. I never questioned anything about it. I just thought, what a shame that, I can't really share this story, because I thought that was the one place that maybe they would want it shared. And so throughout the years, I have later, once I wrote my book, because of the experience, I didn't share it openly until later in my life. My mother passed away, and within days I started writing. I got a calling that I needed to write. And I remember looking up and saying to God, are you kidding me? I don't even write Christmas cards or birthday cards. Like, I'm not a writer. Like, how much more do I have to do? Like, I've made my life around, I became a nurse, I became an RN. And I did that at 19. I went to a counselor my mother took me to through her accounting firm. And they did all these tests and everything to make, to see what I fit in best with. And he sent me home with a big book of careers. And I said a prayer that night when it was quiet at my kitchen table. And I said, God, whatever you think I should do, because I really don't know, except I wanted to be a stewardess. So my mother said, you're not going to be a flight attendant. You're going to go to college. And so I said, okay. And then I remember God's, I remember hearing him say, I want you to be taken seriously. Like, I want you to be respected. And so I said, well, guide me. And so I took the book and I just flipped the pages. And I said, wherever it stops and wherever my finger lands, that's what I'm going to do. So it stopped on nursing. And if I tell you, my family laughed so hard because they said, she won't even clean out a turkey. She's so squeamish. She won't touch anything yucky, or, if it's not pretty, she won't, And I stuck with nursing, and my parents were like, well, we're just going to be throwing this money away because she's not going to do it. And I did it, and I stayed with it, and I was an RN and a BSN, and I actually even taught nursing. So I was a nurse for over 25 years, and I got to see so many wonderful things that God did for people without them ever even knowing. And that's my life in a nutshell. And I'm a mom and kids, and I don't know where we are.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm so mesmerized by your story that, Susanne, I'm just taking it in, like I'm sure all of our viewers and listeners are doing right now. I'm trying to kind of synthesize through your experience, which is unique in that A, it happened as a child. B, you had this very tender experience with Jesus sitting on his lap. But also the B part is very intriguing to me, because you referenced the angels as a council of angels, and correct, the council of angels, and then you had like,
yeah, it was like a committee for sure. And I call it a council because that's more of a better word. But at 12, I didn't have the understanding of a council or any type of, government or community or hierarchy. Until I was older, I could always see how much of it we have here, how so many systems here are set up in a similar fashion, yet so different in power struggles and things. There, none of that was an issue.
Right.
It was safe.
It was safe. Well, it makes sense, actually, because at the beginning of time, of course, the Bible speaks to the dynamic of about a third of the angels having left to fight God and God's authority, and they became the what we call demons. But there is this potential conflict or discussion. But the ones that remain, the 2/3, they were beholden to God, so they were operating under God's authority. And it makes sense that there are in the Bible, and I've studied the angels, 3 types of angels.
And I'm not a theologian, like I don't know the ins and outs of what you know. So I love to hear how you. Please go on.
Well, I think from a child's perspective, and that's what's so fascinating about your account, Susanne, because you're recounting this as an adult, but from a child's perspective, because that's when you had your experience. So you've obviously processed this through your adult mindset. And then the child, you were just taking it in. And what I love about your account, Susanne, you're a nurse, obviously clinically minded, and that you are recounting that in a very accurate way from a child's perspective, and looking at these things. And now you have terminology, obviously, that with counsel, or the committee, or whatever you want to term it. What we've learned, Susanne, through many of these experiences is that there's such a depth and breadth of experiences that are unique to the individual. And Jesus really relates to us as an individual and as a child. There's the scripture that says, suffer unto the children, for theirs is the kingdom of God. So you may have had a clearer understanding, actually, than some of us who were adults when we had our encounter.
I believe that that's why I tried to, when I wrote, I really put myself back into my 12-year-old mindset. And I always kept that very clear, because children have, they don't have a lot of predisposition of thoughts. And I keep that really sacred to myself. And I don't let that, it's hard not to, because you, but anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I didn't have anything to add to that. I think you're spot on, and I applaud you for trying to put that back into the perspective of when you were 12 years old, that you kept that treasure. And
my
I
mom told me to.
he
My
told you
mom
to.
told me to. She
Oh,
said,
your mom
"Always
told you to.
keep that close to your heart and keep it pure, so that you always carry it." And I think looking back, I mean, I wished I could have told it a million times, but I never told it until I wrote my story. Even my husband didn't know. And I never knew that people wanted to really know either, because you talk to people about things and there's like a cutoff point where, especially with Jesus, where people felt like you wanted something, or you're selling something, or you're going to try to convert them or preach, or I don't know, but it never felt like somebody said to me, "Tell me really all that you saw." And so I didn't. And I also knew that, I like with my husband and everything, I didn't want him to look at me like I'm a saint, because I'm not. And I've made mistakes. And even with my experience, I'm not immune to going off the path. And I've definitely was a normal life liver, and I still struggle with lots of things, and I'll come back to him and go, "Oh boy, I'm human. I'm not, and so anyway, writing was really the best way to be a 12-year-old. And I didn't want anything else in my mind. I wrote in my bathroom for 6 years. I didn't want like my children's voices in my head, or what would they think of me, or what will my husband think of me, or what will my work think of me. I work for the government as an RN. I just wrote it purely as what I remembered at 12 years old. And we can all have the fun of figuring out what we think it means, and especially the guidance of theologians and people that know the Bible and scripture can see, the connections. And I just hope it brings it to life today, so that people know it's there for everyone. Because if it was there for me, it's there for everyone, not just me.
And thank you for sharing. Susanne, I wanted to ask you this, and that is, when you were recounting this in the later years as you grew up, after you grew up, were you there in the moment? What was the memory of it like? Was it a distant memory for you? Was it like you were there again?
No, it's never a distant memory. It's like, it's always right there in front of you in the morning. Like, I've had dreams, and I've had surgeries, and I've had anesthesia, and I've given birth, and I've done lots of things in life, and it's nothing like that. It's just the most real thing. What I know from it is, I love people, and I love to ask people for information and advice and wisdom and all those wonderful things. But at the end of the day, if I really want the truth, I'll ask up above, because I know that'll be the honest truth, what's best for me, because they know you so well. And it's pure love, and there's no manipulation or hidden agenda, and there's no control. And so I feel sad for people whenever they think that, well, I don't want to be controlled, or because they hear the words that like obey and different words, and they think they're being, but those are really those are really wise words. They're wisdom words. It's all about wisdom. And would I want to get in trouble with God? No. Do I have fear of that? Yes. I mean, there's a respect that I say, I hope I say this right. And every time I speak, I'll pray first to ask for the words. Please help me make sure I articulate it correctly, because words can really get you into a lot of trouble quickly. And there it doesn't. So here it does. You can get tongue-tied. And so I pause a lot because I know that's pretty much, I know it's the Holy Spirit helping me to wait before I speak. So I'll pause because I won't always know exact words to communicate it through, because it's so much, it's so powerful. My whole body, sometimes after talking, I don't sleep the whole night I'm like high as a kite, because it's so much energy of love that you're just wide awake and ready to go dancing all night. So I have to like tone it down and keep my feet planted and get through this part, because I'm not there. But I did learn it's all connected, Randy. Like on earth as it is in heaven. When I said the Lord's Prayer, I remember hearing it's one big kingdom. Like to me, on earth as it is in heaven, to me felt like we could do better here. We could have more joy, more peace, more. It's all available, but we kind of muck it up and we don't always listen. So, and it's hard to know what you're listening to, and I get it. And I feel very lucky that I saw it, because I always say I'm always more inspired by people that have blind faith than by myself, because I saw it. But people who have blind faith are truly heroes to me, because they genuinely believe without ever seeing. So that to me is such a good heart of a person. For me, like I have no choice. I witnessed it and I saw Christ. Like there's nowhere else, nothing else I'm going to believe.
Well, Jesus said as much, certainly, when he said to the disciples, that they had seen him, and he said, "Blessed are those who believe and have not seen him." So
Right.
that there is a blessing on that the Lord has for those, and there's a blessing that you and others that have shared with our public. You've had great courage in doing so, because you are obviously in a profession that requires a great deal of respect on the part of.
I'm retired now, so that's
okay.
fine.
So maybe you're more at liberty to share, right? I was in the business world,
but I was working when I wrote it, and I wouldn't care if I would still work if I could. But here's what happened to me was, after I wrote it, within a couple of weeks, I had heart surgery. I had a heart attack, and I had to be rushed to Johns Hopkins for open heart surgery. And on Easter Sunday, like the guys from Harvard, and I know doctors and I worked in cardiology, and so they wouldn't touch me with the 10-foot pole because I had an inoperable area. So what happened was, on Easter Sunday, they wound up doing the surgery because it kept getting delayed a day or two. And so they all said we had help. And my cardiologist, I remember when I first met him, I said, "You're going to save my life today." And he said, "Yes, I am." And he held up a little cross, and we looked at each other. Now we're both in the business, so we can talk frankly. But it was a beautiful thing, because when I didn't know what day it was, because I was in so much, I was on machines and everything. So, but when they said it was Easter Sunday, I thought, "Oh, you're kidding me. You're kidding me." So they're like, you've got to tell your story, because I said, I just finished writing my book. Maybe I'm not supposed to tell it, and I got a little fearful, because I thought, maybe I should just and very quickly, some really cool things happened. Like my next door neighbor, who I just met because we had just moved in, and she was running to her car, and I gave her. We had a quick conversation, and I told her I was in the hospital and what happened, and she said, "Please tell your story. It would be a blessing." And she went on to become a minister. Actually, she. Um, so we had this very unique connection, and then my son told me, he said, because I let them read the manuscript, and he goes, Mom, you've never been afraid, just be fearless, just do it. And so I did, and my family was supportive, and that meant a lot to me. Did they all, I just don't know how people get through life without something like this, because even for me, life has so many challenges, and our loved ones, we watch them have challenges, and I can't imagine not wanting or having that amount of support, especially when you can just lift it up and say a prayer and put it in God's hands. But of course, I have that trust to know whether I like the outcome or not, he's handling it perfectly correctly.
Yeah.
Like I may not like it, or it may not be what I want, but I know I asked and I will be given the true answer. Does that make any sense?
Childlike faith, I think, Susanne.
Yeah.
You have childlike faith.
and
It's
that's-
almost as though the heaven encounter that you had as a child has carried over. Obviously, you're very articulate and very intelligent, and yet you maintain that. It seems like you maintain that
I
level.
am a 5-year-old. Sometimes my daughter will tell you. And
Well, that can be a good thing. I think we all could go there, like
we can go there in
Peter Pan story,
Peter Pan. and I met my husband the same way, with faith, and I prayed and I made a list, and I always joke with him that I probably left out a few things when I asked, but when we're not getting along. But the truth is, it's very normal. I like to share my joys. I'll just look up at the sky and share. I like to include. And so when I hear people being put off by, God in your life, like it's another thing, or, for me, it's very fun. It's magical. And it's also a little bit like daunting, because how, I only know the part I saw, how big it is, but I know it's a million times bigger and stronger and more powerful, because of course I got the child treatment. As an adult, I'm not so sure how they approach you, but I was lucky that I got that piece. Anyway, it was absolutely, I could go on and on. So please stop me, because
I'm loving it, Susanne, and I trust that others are as well. And I hope that everybody has stayed to the end, because, there is during the course of these conversations, Susanne, sometimes I'll get a sense of what God is wanting to speak specifically to the message that is shared, and to the audience, and how that is imparted to them. And I think, I think you may be the first one who has had a child experience that we've interviewed. And I think in this day and age, with all of the challenges that we're facing and in the world that's
Right.
going on,
right.
that we need to adopt more of that childlike faith that, it's going to be okay. And you talked about, in your experience here, you were on the lap of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And he was comforting you. He was the comforter. And then you had the angel, the Melchizedek, I think, who was there, and he was a little bit daunting. He was like, get serious about this. This is, we have a decision to make. And, the council was meeting, and Jesus at the end of it, Jesus is saying, okay, well, I've made my decision,
Right.
basically, right?
Right. He lets you know he knows everything going all along. And much like a teacher, he supervised, like I knew that he was watching everyone and everything. So like through that, that he really knows everyone and everything that's going on, you know. Um, you know, and I knew too, like I used to laugh when people, not laugh, that's the wrong word, sorry. When people said rest in peace, for me, I used to think, as a kid, I used to think, but you're not really resting, you're working. Like, no offense, but when you pass on, you're going to be working. I hate to tell you, you're going back to work.
But you'll love it.
But you're not, right? But there's no money involved. So that takes out a lot of problems. And so the work is actually the same work with a good intention, but there's a lot of work. And so just seeing, men in some sort of armor, I knew they came from work, and I knew these councils worked, and there were buildings with information. So, and Jesus oversees, all of it. And you wonder, like, are 9 billion people too many? No, absolutely not too many. Not even a drop in the bucket too many. I mean, this is like beyond what we could create here. So, but it's also really relatable on some level, on some level. I would never, ever, ever say that I understood it all. But on some level, I can always relate and crack a joke to my husband and say, like, yeah, that's, it's all connected. So he's always watching, listening, and a lot of things here. I always feel sad when people blame God, because I think, but we have so much free will. As a child, he listened to what I wanted. I wanted to go back to my mom, and he heard, he let me know that he didn't dismiss it. He didn't treat me like he was this almighty and you will do as I say. He was calm and loving and listening. And that doesn't mean he wasn't strong either. So it was magnificent power. It was just this magnificent power that I still feel about this big next to him in that power. Like, I still feel like there's so much more I want to know. And yet I don't need to, and I know he'll tell me when I'm supposed to. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm alive to be able to tell the story, because after the heart attack, I wasn't sure I would make it. And neither was my cardiologist. He would say, please, like, don't, mess this up. You're really, I've never worked so hard on anybody. So
Wow. Yeah, I've been in the cardiovascular space.
you
I know we didn't
know,
talk about that, but I trained as a clinician and as well. And I know they say doctors and nurses, make the worst patients because they know too much going in.
we're the worst. And so here I am talking to you on this amazing program, and that you provide for so many listeners that now have the opportunity to hear God's stories and decide for themselves where they want to be in that relationship. And I try to explain, like, my daughter and her friends, they're young and they're 20s, and and it's relatable to them because they thought, well, we don't fit in a certain mold, some of these kids, or I'm this or I'm that. And the truth is, it's a relationship, and you are good enough, and you are enough, and he sees you and knows you and created you. So don't worry about it. Just be open. And he really just wants people to love him back. Like a parent, he gives us the opportunity. Like, as a parent, I learned so much, because I learned wow, my kids go off to college. Did they forget about me? Did they forget
Hmm.
what I taught them? Did they forget what they learned at home? They don't see me anymore. They're away. Will they remember, or will they get in trouble, or will they get lost, or will they get hurt? What if they need me? Will they call on me? Will they call me? So that's how, as a child, I looked at it as not as a, you better love me or else. I looked at it as, I love you so much and I hope you love me back, because your life can be so much better. you know
Yeah.
I don't want to say easier, but more supported and more richer. And I don't know, things make so much more sense to me. I'm very lucky that happened to me, uh, in that way. In
I'm
that way.
glad. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Suzanne, because um, there's so much fear in the world. And the last one we should fear about, that the fear of the Lord is my strength, as one scripture that's cited oftentimes. But fear, if you look at the Greek, Hebrew translations, that fear is more awe, the awe, as you
Mm.
said.
It's awe, and and people go, well, do you feel like, when I became a nurse, do you feel like you needed to serve? Did I feel like, you know, I just I just wanted to be the best version of me, because I always want Jesus to be proud of me. Or I don't know if pride's the right word, but to, like, just to show respect, to show that I love him, to show, because I want to. There's a difference between being like, I don't know anyone that's in a loving relationship that does it because they're afraid of somebody. Well, you better be afraid of me and love me or else. I mean, you know, it's not a force. It's an avail. It's a gift. It's a gift. It's an absolute gift. And if you want to be part of that gift, um, that's how I feel. I
Yeah.
feel lucky to be part of that gift. I'm so lucky I saw it. And I just get really sad when I think about how many people miss out on those gifts, miss out on the extra. But I know he'll let them know who he is in their perfectly right time, if need be. He'll and if not, well, I don't know. I don't have those answers, but um it's there. It's really there. It's the realest thing I know. Um, it's been there my whole life. Again, I'm not a nun, and I'm not a perfect person, and I had fun, and I did good things and not so good things, and things I'm proud of and things I'm not so proud of. And I'm just regular person who calls upon God to help me out when I need it. And I like to say thank you a lot, because gosh, there's so many wonderful things he does, like so much beauty in the world. Um, don't miss it. Don't miss looking around at the little things. And after you, a lot of people learned when I was a nurse, a lot of my patients at the end of their lives, that's who they're calling on. They're not calling on anyone else. That's where they go. And they never say, like, oh, I wish I spent more time at work. Oh, I wish I did this. They're always looking for more time with their family, more time with their loved ones, and they're looking for God. So, you know, for me, like, whenever I think about what do I want most, it's time. It's time with my loved ones. It's time with my friends. It's so those are the things money can't buy. And you hear all those crazy sayings and slogans, and they're true. They're just that is the truth, that from my experience. And there's so much joy. I do see the pain and suffering when we hear the crucifixion story, and I know that makes me cry inside every time. But the joy is so big. I mean, he's just so loving and joyful, and there's so much good. It's just amazing. So, but yeah.
No. Well, the joy of,
Anyway, because you've been there and you've experienced it. So but
well, you're right that
you know.
joy is the ethos of heaven, but joy is emanated from Jesus himself. And I love, again, I love the perspective from a child having processed this as an adult. And I'm going to give you the last word. We're wrapping this up, but I do want to, I know we both want to, Susanne, invite those who kind of question, well, am I going? Am I not going? You know, am I saved? Am I not saved? Well, you know, it is a no-brainer, you know, for us, that is Susanne and I, to say, you know, Jesus is the way, the truth,
Right.
and the life. That, you know, he said himself, no one comes to the Father but through me. So he said, you know, if you want to go there to meet God, then he's the way. So he also
he is 100% real, and he is the truth. And I would shout that from a mountaintop. I mean, it's been a secret because, you know, I've been asked not to, but as soon as my mom passed, I honored my commitment to her, and I wrote, and I'm so happy that I'm free to say that out loud, because it is the most truest thing I ever experienced. The truth. It was the truth.
wow.
Yep.
And I love how your mother said, you know, keep that treasure. I don't want a lawsuit.
Yeah, she didn't take the money. We could have been a very wealthy family, very wealthy person. And I worked hard for a living. I worked Christmases, I worked holidays. I worked with the flu, and so I mean, I can't imagine a gift greater than having that relationship. There really is nothing more meaningful in my life than that relationship. So I'm sharing it now openly, and we'll see who can benefit from it. And hopefully, I know, you share it and you step aside, because people will pick up what they need, and God works with them too, directly, just like me, just like everyone else. And so it's wonderful that you have these platforms that can reach people. Amazing. And knowledge. I love to hear when you interpret my story, when you take the pieces and you go, yes, yes, and yes. And I've always felt really good speaking about it in a church, because I know that Jesus is always with anyone who wants to talk about him. He's right there with you.
Yes. So. We underestimate God's love always.
Yes, always. I do too, even always.
So much greater than if you and I, and we'll just get an invitation to those who feel distant from God and who don't know, am I going to heaven or am I not? To just pray with us. Okay. And just say something like this: Lord Jesus, I know I failed. I know I've sinned. And I know that you sacrificed yourself on the cross for me. And you said that whoever would confess, I'm confessing their sins. I'm confessing my sins to you right now. And that you would, and I'm asking you, Lord Jesus, to become the Lord and Savior of my life, and to take control of me, so that I might live with you and for you all the days of my life here, and that I might be welcomed by you into heaven. If you pray something like that, in your heart, then the Lord says, welcome, my beloved, to you, because you have at that point the birthing of God's Spirit in you. You become the temple of the Holy Spirit. The temple that was built in the time of Moses and all of the prophets. That temple was torn down, and it doesn't exist to this day. I mean, it's just a remnant, actually, a wall,
Right.
basically. But Jesus imparted his presence, that is the Holy Spirit, to those who are his children. And so you have that. You've got God with you day in and day out, every second of the day. So
it's amazing. When you invite him, he comes. And
yes.
And when he's with you, it just makes everything easier in the sense of knowing that, I mean, why not go right to the top? He's
yeah,
like,
right. Stop messing around. Go into the throne room.
No, just go right to the top. I mean, he's offering to be there, and he's just hoping that you love him back. And how can you not? Because someone who loves you and that much, I mean, how it's like if you have a really loving father, and how do you not love your dad back? Your dad loves you so much, and he's been there for you, and you've been sick and all different kinds, and in good times you can't wait to share. It's very much a child and father relationship with a really, really super dad, the one you dream of, and then some. And so we get to see that, and I think that's a lot of the experience we have when we're parents is we get that opportunity also to, and what do you do with a child that doesn't love you back? Well, you still love them, don't you? And even when they're bad, we still love our children. And even when they're doing things we don't agree with, and we've given them advice and they're not listening, we still love them. That's the most easiest way I can explain it, except it's on a level that's much more than a human being like myself can do as a mother. I think I was an okay mom. I'm sure my kids will tell you I was wonderful, but it's he's perfect, and perfect is not, you're in awe of it. You're just in awe of it. Like, wow.
And you are still today. I mean, that lingering effect.
Yeah. It's a high that,
will never go away.
Because I know it exists. And when you know it exists, and you just want to celebrate it. And who do I get to celebrate it with? Because I'm like, sometimes I felt lonely about it because there were a lot of people but then there are people that do. And so when I find that, it's like even more exciting. So
I know, I feel the same way. We have almost a kindredness. I think it is a kindredness, Susanne, because we know.
We know. And I feel like so excited to speak with you because it's a collaboration, and even more light comes through. And I just love that. I love meeting you. Like, this is something I'll never forget. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. And likewise to you, Susanne. And I love how you said that. Yes. Jesus was conveying his love to you, and he was hopeful that you would return that.
And in love, there was trust. He conveyed so much trust, and because he lets you know that he understands you, and that how many people just want to be heard and understood, like what they're feeling or thinking, and they're like, nobody really gets me, but I know who does, and he does. And so
he said those were the first two words he said to me when I was with Jesus, were trust me. And I tear up now So if I go there, that's why
I
it's
know.
easier
I
for
do
me as an
too.
interviewer, because
I do
if I
too.
go there, I'm just like, I'm sobbing like a baby. I miss
Me too. Me
broken.
too. I know.
So
And,
we have
and
that,
it
and
never goes away, Randy, because I've been at it for over 40 years and well, I don't want to, it's 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 like it, you know, and people ask me, and it's a natural question, like, well, do you forget? Yeah, I don't forget the experience. I don't forget, but I will put it out of my mind sometimes. And I have, you know, as a kid, and because you got to remember, I had to go through my teen years and try to fit in, and so it wasn't always, but it was always there. And people always wondered, like, why is she so happy about things? Like, what? Because I could have fun in a paper bag because I know the joy, and and it's childlike. I have the best time with like little people because
I
they
love
get
it. I
it.
love how
Like
God kept
little kids get it.
childlike effervescence and enthusiasm with you. I mean, it's just,
You
it's
know,
phenomenal.
it's
Suffering for the
fun.
children, for theirs is the kingdom of God. I mean,
And little kids get it. They're open
yeah,
and they
yeah.
feel it, and it's not a big deal. They know it's real. When you talk to them, they're just like, yeah, what about it? It's real. Like, what else do we need? And the other thing about being a child experiencer is I used to wonder how much more, like, and especially when I was a young nurse, I used to think, how much more does God need to do to prove things to people? He
Yeah,
does it every day. Like,
yeah.
what more convincing does a person need? Like, I, it blows my mind. I think, gosh, we're really something else. We need to be convinced
Yes.
constantly. You avoid a car accident and it was a miracle. Like, I should not have survived that accident. We get
Yeah.
home, we forget all about it, and we're starting to worry about our bills or this or that. We completely forgot the gift of avoiding that car accident. And
Yeah.
we move so quickly, and children, like, they're not that caught up in life yet. So they still can feel and connect a lot quicker. Because I know as an adult, you've got so much more to do that it's very hard to stop and connect. But that's what's required, is stopping for a minute and looking around and noticing, wow, like he created that. Look at the sunrise. Just a sunrise or a sunset every day is different. Look
Mhm.
at it, and you can't not see God in all the beauty that's around. So I shouldn't say
Yeah.
you can't not. I can't not see it. I can only speak for
Yeah.
myself. I
Well,
can't.
it's, and I think it's important to worship the creator and not the creation, and the appreciation of the creation is the reflection of the
The
greatness of God.
reflection. It's in he he's everywhere and everything, and in people too. You can, when you look at people, even when you get really angry at people. As a kid, I used to think, but God created that person and he loves them too, and I should too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I should love, like, that's how a child experience. That's what I got from it. So even when someone was being cruel or this or that, I could still be like, yeah, but God loves them.
Somebody has to, and it's going to
I
be
might
God.
not, but God
Maybe
does.
there's only one, but that would be God.
I'd be like,
But
well,
yes, it's
maybe,
so
yeah.
true. Well, Susanne, this has been an absolute pleasure, and
Same
again, thank you
here.
so much for
Same
joining us.
here. Same here.
And thank you. And we'll be
Anytime.
noting Suzanne's book. And if you want more information, you can go to randyk.org and you can get more info. We'll be sure to relay any messages to Susanne that you have for her. And of course, you can comment in the body of this video, and make sure to like and subscribe, please. And We look forward to staying in touch with you, Susanne. Thank
Oh,
you
please do.
so
Please
much.
do. Please do. I'm here.
All
Anytime.
right.
Thank you,
Well,
Randy.
God bless you. Do you have any? I said I would give you the last word before I say goodbye.
Oh, the last word. Aren't you a gentleman?
Any parting words, last words?
Just keep it simple. It's very simple. God came to us very simply, and he's not here to complicate your life. He's here to make it better. So, stay simple and appreciate the simple things in life, because they're very real and very good. There's so many messages. I would say listen to Randy and go and whatever his he knows more than me. But I'm just very simple person, and I find the greatest joy and love and light, and I find God in the simple things. So
keep it simple.
That's
a great last message. Well, until next time, this has been Susanne Seymoure and Randy Kay, and be of good cheer, because heaven is in your future. Take care and God bless.
God bless.
Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe. And if you'd like further information, go to our website at randyk.org, where our mission is simple: to share the great news of God's love.